feel is a really bad indication of where your position is. Okay, so in order for this to work properly, we need the biomechanics to be working well. So we need to be sitting in the right spot. So with the road bike, the saddle, again, is everything. I've got to get this saddle in the right spot so that my leg extension is correct.
Hi guys, Coach Fenner here from FTP Training. We're down here at the Watts factory with co-founder Damian Mason, who's also one of the FTP's top coaches. Today we're going to look at road bikes, and we're going to look at getting a bike fit for a road bike and getting your position optimized to produce the best power and be comfortable out there on the road. Thanks for coming in this morning, Damo.
No worries, mate.
Fantastic. So if you can sort of take us through probably the classic mistakes people make, and then we'll get the position optimized and look at some angles.
Yep, no worries at all. First thing I see when guys come in to get their road bike sorted out, similar with the time trial bike, they're riding on feel to a large extent. They're looking for how they feel when they sit on the bike. Feel is a really bad indication of where your position is. Okay, so in order for this to work properly, we need the biomechanics to be working well. So we need to be sitting in the right spot. So with the road bike, the saddle, again, is everything. I've got to get this saddle in the right spot so that my leg extension is correct, my back angles are correct, etc. So I'm looking at saddle height and I'm looking at saddle setback. With a roadie, there's not a lot to it. You know, it really is just the saddle, and then we've got our stem length and our height as well. That's pretty much all we can muck with. We can do a little bit with crank lengths as well, but the main thing is getting this saddle in the right position. So the most common thing I see with guys when they get on their bikes, with roadies, I reckon 90% of the fits that I do, they're sitting too high and they're sitting too far back. Guys, again, they're looking for that, trying to get that extension out because they think that's where the power is. So I see them with their bum sitting right up and back. Okay, so that's generally the most common thing I see. So I've got fans set up at the moment. The range is, knee extension range for the road bike is 35 to 40 degrees. And the knee forward of foot for the road bike, again, which is looking at the knee over the foot, which is your saddle setback, is currently, the range is plus or minus 10. The way I think about it is, when it comes to where my setback is how I'm sitting over the bottom bracket. That's sort of the thought that I have in my head as to whether I'm in front of it or behind it. It's not technically correct, but that's sort of just the easiest way that I think about it. So at the moment, I've got Fenn set up in a pretty typical position. He's sitting up too high. His saddle's also sitting back too far. So his knee forward of foot's at minus 30. He should be plus or minus 10 millimeters. And his knee extension is at 25 degrees, and he should be 35 to 40 degrees. So typically when guys come in for their bike fits that I see this, we're going to be bringing them forward and we're going to be bringing them down. All right, so we'll just do that. We'll have a bit of a play with his fencer's position to get him into the right spot. Now, as I bring him down on the saddle, and on your bike, I would be lowering you through the seat post, because of the angle of your seat tube, simply by bringing the saddle down actually brings the saddle forward as well. So sometimes you can get away with just simply by lowering the saddle. Sometimes you have to adjust both. So in this case, we'll just simply lower Fenns to get his right extension, and then from there I'll be able to work out whether or not I need to adjust his saddle setback as well. All right, so there we've got him about 37 degrees. Okay, so now you can see his extension. He's not overextending like he was before. And that's actually brought his knee forward of foot nicely into about minus 4. Okay, so if that wasn't enough, if I got his extension to where it needed to be, but he was still sitting too far back, then I'd actually have to physically push the saddle forward to get the extension correct, his saddle setback correct. Now the same thing, if I bring that saddle forward, again, that's going to change his extension. So sometimes just by bringing the saddle forward, I might actually make his extension too small. So I'm going to have to lift him up a bit. So I'll go through this process of moving that saddle up, down, forward and back until I get both of them sitting where I want them. Obviously a lot easier here to do on the move, just wind a dial. On the road bike, we'd have to stop, move the saddle, put him back on, do another capture. The beauty of the retool system is he's doing it under load, so I've got him actually putting good pressure on the pedals. Sometimes when you've got some of the longer saddles, if we have a look at a typical Arione or one of the physics, you can actually move quite a lot on these saddles. So when the guys first sit on the bike, they tend to move around quite a bit. So one of the beauties of doing this fit under load is I can actually whack a bit of power on. So depending on the rider, I might crank it up a bit, put a few more watts through it. It will actually force the rider to sit in the correct position. Then I'll back it off again and they'll adjust. So I'm looking to see where that spot is on the bike that they're actually going to sit on that saddle. So I'll have a bit of a play with that. And even for guys that are, are racers, guys that are going to spend a lot of time on the rivet, I can actually fine tune this fit. Depending on the person, I can bring the power on to try to get them to sit in the right spot. Saddles is a big one with the road bikes. With guys, they do tend to be able to get away with a different, relatively painful looking saddles, but they do tend to work. The females is a different story. I get a lot of females that come in for fits who are uncomfortable on their saddles, but they just seem to think that that's what the way it should be, that they accept that they're going to be uncomfortable on their saddle. The answer to that is no. There should always be a saddle for you that's going to work. Okay, it won't necessarily be, there's no perfect saddle for any one person. All the saddles are different in terms of how they fit the person. There will be different ones for females and for males, but that doesn't mean that a female can't sit on a male one or a male can't sit on a female one. It really just comes down to finding the right saddle that's going to suit you. Okay, so I've got Fence here in a nice position. He's come down into the drops, gives me an idea of what his back angle is going to be like when he's racing. The retool system is designed to look at it from the hoods, but with somebody that races, I will get them to come down into the drops just to have a look, because I can actually fine tune this position. So if this guy, Fens, was doing some NRS, he spends 80% of his time in the drops when he races, I can actually fine tune this position in terms of his saddle height and his extension to make sure he's in an optimal position when he races. The other thing I look at, once I know that that saddle's correct, I have a look at his reach. Okay, so reach is, as it sounds, is how far is he actually reaching. So the retool system does have angles that I can look at. I look at his back angle. I look at the angle between his shoulder, his elbow and his wrist. The first thing, to be honest, that I look at is when they first get on the bike, where do they put their hands? So if you just bring your hands back, if somebody's reach is too long, this is typically what it looks like straight away. They get on the bike and they're trying to be comfortable. And you find that that's where they sit all the time. If you have a look at your tape, have a look at your bar tape, if it's wearing and behind the hoods, that's a good example of the bike is too long for you. All right. So when they first get on and I see that, I know straight off the bat that, well, we might have a bit of a reach issue. But as I said, if the saddle's in the wrong spot, then that might be not what I'm necessarily looking at. But now that I know that I've got his saddle in the right position, I can have a look at where his hands are sitting and I can decide, all right, he's actually now moved into the hoods because I've brought his saddle forward, or no, he's reaching. I'll see they've got straight arms, their shoulders are forward, they've got a bow in their back because they're trying to reach those hoods. So depending on that angle, looking at where he is at the moment, he could probably come back a little bit. It looks like he's a little bit long. So the easiest way to do that, we just whack on another stem. All right, there's obviously all different sizes of stems, short and long. But again, until I've got that saddle correct, the reach doesn't mean anything. Once I know that he's sitting in the right spot, then I can start to have a play with his extension. What I'm looking for there is I need him to be relaxed. I need him to be comfortable. If there's tension here, tension in the hands, it's all going to fatigue. It's going to cost you energy. If you can't ride in this position comfortably, after a couple of hours of that, you're going to get sore arms, sore shoulders, you're going to get headaches, you're going to get a sore neck. So when you're sitting on that bike, everything should be soft. You should be able to sit there nice and relaxed. No real pressure on the hoods. You shouldn't see blood, your hands going red because you're gripping for near death. If you're getting pins and needles in the hands, right? If there's just too much pressure going down onto those bars, it can be a reach issue. It can also be your back angle as well. So Fens is sitting at the moment around 42 degrees. Fens is a pretty fit Masters rider. Anywhere in the mid-40s is good enough for most Masters that race. The range for the road bike is between 40 and 50 degrees. So I know that he can comfortably hold that if he needs to. If somebody's not as fit, isn't really a racer, he's more of a does it for general fitness, they don't need to be that low. They can be upwards around the 50-degree mark and be quite comfortable. All right, so what I'm doing here is this is the stem adjuster on the retool. This is the equivalent of just simply putting on a shorter stem onto the road bike. Now, if you find, this is a big one, if you find that after you've put the shorter stem on, you're still overreaching and you can't come back any further, now you're starting to run into the bike's too big scenario. We get the same thing with the saddle. If you can't get that saddle any further forward or any further back, if you can't go any shorter in the stem, etc., then the frame's too big. If you find that your hands are still back here somewhere and you're on a 60mm stem, now you're going to have to start looking at, well, do I really need to go to a smaller size bike, etc. It's one of the reasons why we use the move, is we can put somebody on this thing, we can actually have a look at them, find out what their optimal position is. And from this, I can actually work out what size bike you really need. And you can have to start to have a look at the different options that are out there, get you on the right size bike from the start.
So that's definitely the benefit of coming into the Watts factory for a bike fit before you buy your bike. Expensive mistake if you bought the wrong one. So Damo will do a great pre-bike fit on the move, get everything dialed, all your angles dialed, can then chat with your bike shop, make sure that the bike they're ordering in is the bike that's going to fit you, so you don't make that $6,000 to $10,000 mistake and have something that you just can't ride properly and you're out, you're just uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's nothing worse when I get a client in and I've done as much as I can do and they're just still not there and they've just bought the bike. It's a pretty bad feeling, to be honest. So, and if you go really super short on your stem, then you're starting to compromise the geometry of the steering as well. So I'm even going the other way. If you go to a really long stem, it's pretty popular these days with a lot of the guys that race. But if you're going out to 120, 130mm stem, it's changing the way the bike steers. Right? And if you're not ready for that, if you're going to be doing some reasonably complex descents or that sort of high speed stuff and you've altered that steering geometry and you're not super confident, that's not necessarily where you want to be. So if you're not sure about the size, it's worth at least asking the question, getting somebody to have a look at you, whether you come in to see us, we can quickly set you up on this and I can work out what sort of frame, stack and reach you're going to need so that we get you in the right bike to start with.
Brilliant, Damo. Thanks very much again. I think it's obviously provided a lot of great information for everyone to understand how a road bike fit works and what sort of angles are optimal to get your position dialed so you can be, riding some of the big rides that you want to do, potentially 3 peaks or the tap, and, halfway through you're not going to be buckled and having a real shocker. So thanks very much, Damo. It's awesome to have your experience and knowledge there. All right, guys, I'll catch you out on the road or trail. Bye-bye.